forget that this is a bikini pattern. So when I did the seam allowances for this pattern, for instance, you can see here that the seam allowance is 0.6 centimeters. And if you wanted to sew this with an elastic made for bras, you would have to adjust the seam according to the elastic that you are going to use. That's why I explained it in the beginning that the elastic here, the elastic band is 1.8, so I'm going to use this one. But for instance, if you want to use a smaller elastic, you just need to remove the seam allowance so that it is adjusted to the width of your elastic, okay? For the top here, I'm not going to do with elastic today. I'm going to do a completely different method, not the usual method for bras, but you just stick with me until the end so you will see how I'm going to do this. This is stretch satin. It's my first time working with this. It has a little bit of stretch on one direction and no stretch on the other one. So for my bridge, I'm going to cut with no stretch horizontally, because I don't want my two cups to separate from each other. So I'm gonna cut the bridge with no elasticity on this direction, okay? So I'm gonna cut it like so, in this position, to make sure that there's no stretch horizontally. Then I'm also going to cut my cradle on the same position. As for the cups, I will turn my fabric and cut with the stretch horizontally, because in my specific option today, I don't mind having this small stretch on the fabric. My lace has stretch, but the stretch is so little that I really don't need to use stabilizer, and I'm gonna use it with the greater stretch horizontally, but only for the cups. You will see a lot of times on the reverse side a line and some arrows. This is because the grain line you cannot see when you are cutting the reverse side. So sometimes I go to my window and I draw on the other side. Well, but you can also not do that if you fold the fabric like I'm going to do now, like so, like so. And now I could cut it like so, but I don't have fabrics here, so probably I will do it like so. I always like to save fabric, so this is the best way to save fabric. See how much fabric I saved? I just need to make sure that this line is visible. Let me do a parallel line to this one. Yeah, like so. And this is my grain line, so my vertical line, this fold here must be parallel to this. If you really want to be obsessed, sometimes I am, I even place a ruler on the fold and then I align the grain line like I did now to show you. And now I'm ready to cut. As I told you, I'm going to do this not the conventional way on usually how I sew the bras with the stabilizer, etc. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut 4 cups, because I'm gonna use the same on the outside under the lace and the same on the inside. So when you look inside the bra, it will have the same fabric. You could do this with 1 layer of the stretch satin and 1 layer of stabilizer. I'm gonna do it today with 2 layers of the satin. So I already placed my horizontal stretch perpendicular to my grain line, so I'm ready to cut my pattern pieces. Here I'm going to cut this with the seam allowance, so not the pattern that I drafted for my lace, but the actual pattern that it's included when you buy Snow Flake bikini. And I'm gonna cut 2 and then again 2, so I need 4 today. If you prefer, again, cut 2 like this and then opposite, and don't forget you can cut the same with stabilizer. So as you may remember, I told you I wanted to use this, and this is black, and this is going to be on the side seam with my boning. So to make sure that this is not visible, I'm gonna do something, and I'm gonna show you how to do it also. So I'm gonna go ahead and, for instance, I'm gonna measure 3 from my pattern, not from the seam allowance, from the pattern. I'm gonna draw a line here, and I'm gonna cut a piece of fabric on this one with the greater stretch horizontally, just a small bit like this. And I'm also going to go ahead and cut the same with a lace. I'm gonna see if I can grab a piece of lace that fits here. Yeah. And I'm going to actually put a little bit of lace on the back, just on this area here, and a little bit of stretch satin underneath, so that I am sure that I'm gonna hide my black channel with the boning, okay? So I'm gonna cut here, I'm gonna go to my window, copy this, and then create a small pattern piece, and then I'm gonna cut the lace and the stretch satin with that small pattern piece. Don't forget to label your pattern piece. So I've drawn with the seam allowances and everything. I mentioned where it is, the top, the side seam, the bottom, and also the lace scallop, okay? It's easier in the future so that you don't think, what's this? This is garbage, and then you throw it away and you could use it again, and you have to do it again. So I'm gonna use this to cut this one, and then I'm gonna do a symmetric one, and the same, I'm gonna cut exactly the same for the stretch satin. So I told you we were going to do a different method than usual. And this is how, this is now you have to pay very attention to what I'm gonna tell you. You're gonna cut one of the upper cup edges. You are going to remove the seam allowance from one of them. So one of them is going to be smaller than the other one, okay? And I have them here flat on my table. I usually just go ahead with my roller and I cut it. If you are not so sure on doing this, you should remove this line here, cut the pattern, a copy of course, and use that to cut the 2 pattern pieces. I'm gonna just cut because it's easier for me. Once you have done that, we are also going to do exactly the same on our back band. But now imagine we will have one band on one side. I'm going to show you on one side, and then you replicate for the other. And you remember that we cut this small piece here. So this is for this side, and this is for this, and also this one here, and this one here. And we are going to trim the seam allowance on these 2 fabrics, not on the power mesh, but only on these 2 fabrics. And for the back bands, we also need another layer of fabric, which I'm going to be using this one. This is also power mesh, but it's very light, very light, very thin, very soft. And I'm going to use it with this color because it's completely neutral once it's underneath this turquoise color, emerald color. So I'm actually going to be cutting 2 back pieces from this like copper skin tone fabric, power mesh, light power mesh. Now we want to remove the seam allowance from our second fabric, in this case this copper one on the top here. So I'm first going to prepare my cups on my stretch satin. Be careful, it's very easy to mix up the pattern pieces and twist them, and when you sew, you end up sewing it wrong, and it's very bad. Believe me, it happened to me a lot. So I always keep my pieces in the right position, so I try not to do a mistake at this stage. And what we need to do now is make sure that we have our notches marked on each piece, which I haven't, so I'm gonna do it now. I'm gonna mark the notches, and then we'll start combining the three pattern pieces for the cups, and we will actually be sewing them together all at once. So I'm gonna tell you why. How? Mark the notches, please. Now you really need to watch carefully, no matter my explanations, and since I even have similar fabric, you really need to watch carefully. So I'm gonna place, I have my inner cup and my outer cup, and I'm gonna align the seams. Sometimes I don't even need the notches because the fabric is not stretchy vertically, so I don't need it, because when I align it matches, so sometimes I don't use it. So align this edge. I hope this doesn't ruin my fabric, my pins. And now I'm going to sew here, but instead of just doing this and combining these one together, I want to do this at once for the 4 layers. So imagine that this is one of the cups, right? The inner and the outer, and the inner and the outer, and you want to do exactly the same with these 2, like so, right? So what you want to do is, you have this here, you will place your wrong with wrong for the inner cup, and then right with right, this is the outer cup, on top here. And if you are, whoa, what's this? Oh my god, this is not going to work. Sometimes I do mistakes at this stage, and I do this wrong. But what I always do once this is pinned, or once this has a clip, let me place a clip, is I actually open the seam, and I can already see if this is going to do what I want, which is hiding the seam inside between the 2 fabrics. So this one, and this is going to be like so. Yeah, and the seams will be hidden, so it's correct. The alignment is correct. So I will repeat the process for the second cup. Make sure that you do exactly the same but symmetric, so that you don't end up having 2 cups for the same sides, okay? With both of them sewn together, I opened my seams, and I'm gonna do a top stitch with my straight stitch machine. Now this is the time you have to check again which is your inner cup and the position of your cup, if it is correct, because it's very easy for us to do this wrong and to change the position of the cups. So I always check at this point. So once you have the position correctly aligned, you can go ahead and do the top stitch, securing the seams together. Just slightly stretch the fabric, just flatten the fabric so that your seam is very nice. Practice your stitch so that you have the stitch perfect for your fabrics. If you are wondering the distance in which I sew this, it's actually 4 millimeters from the fold. I actually did something here that I particularly don't like, is that this is not symmetric at the moment. As you can see, the top stitch is on the right, on the side of the outer cup, and here is on the side of the inner cup. This means that when I align the 4 fabrics, I should have remembered this and align them to the other side, so that the seam would be facing opposite to this one, so that when I sew, I would now have the top stitch also symmetric. I think this makes sense, but well, it's a detail, but I like to cover all details, so it is what it is. Now I'm gonna show you how to sew the top cup. And I marked with a clip the inner top cup, so that in the future I don't mess up. And now I have my 2 upper cups here with the top seam. Remember, we removed the seam allowance from one of the sides. and I'm just going to align the top of the fabrics together, and I'm going to sew them. But I'm going to apply elastic, my rubber elastic from my swimwear fabric that I usually wear on my swimwear, and I'm going to apply the elastic on the sides of the main fabric, and I'm going to do the same for both cups. In this case, the main side is the bigger one, okay? So I keep it facing up on my table, the bigger one, and I pin with my upper side on my table facing up. This is so I don't get this confused when I go to my sewing machine. Again, it's very important for you not to mess up and align wrong fabrics, so make sure you are aligning the top edge of your upper cup. And let's go ahead to the overlock and apply the elastic here. I mean, you can do this on your with a zigzag if you want, or but I actually, if I have my overlock, I prefer going through with the overlock here with my elastic.